Welcome back to QuickSpeak, the English podcast, where we like to get into all sorts of things that are, pretty interesting. And today, we are going to be talking about sitting.
Okay.
Yeah, sitting.
Sitting,
It's something that we do all the time.
Yeah.
And it's something that we probably don't think too much about.
Right.
But we've got an expert here to tell us maybe we should think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's something that seems very harmless, even natural, right?
Right.
Like, we want to sit down. We've had a long day.
Totally.
We want to relax. But the human body, it turns out, wasn't really designed to be sitting for 8 hours a day,
Right.
like many of us do.
Yeah. In fact, I'm sitting right now as we speak. So
Me too.
you've got my attention for sure. So let's just get into it. What kind of health risks are we actually talking about here when we talk about sitting too much?
Well, one of the biggest things that we're seeing now is that sitting is being linked to an increased risk of chronic diseases,
Okay.
heart disease, type 2 diabetes,
Yeah.
even certain types of cancers.
Really cancer too. I knew it wasn't good,
Yeah.
but that seems like a whole other level.
It's true. It's definitely an area of ongoing research.
Right.
But they're starting to see some connections with certain types of cancers, like colon cancer, endometrial cancer, and even lung cancer.
Wow. Okay, so what's the link there? Is it just from like lack of movement or is there something else going on?
More research is definitely needed, but some experts believe that chronic inflammation,
Okay.
which prolonged sitting can actually trigger,
Right.
might play a role in the development and the progression of these cancers.
Okay.
Additionally, it's possible that all that sitting can lead to hormonal changes,
Right.
which might also contribute to an increased risk.
Okay, so it's not just about like feeling stiff and achy after a long day at the desk. This is something we should be paying attention to.
Exactly.
Okay, well, what about this? Because I know a lot of people are probably thinking this. I try to hit the gym regularly. I'm pretty active. Does it matter if I'm sitting all day?
That's a great question, and one that I get a lot. And unfortunately, even if you are physically active, those long periods of sitting, they can still have negative consequences.
Really? So it's not like I work out for 30 minutes, so I'm good.
I wish it were that easy.
Right.
There have been studies that have shown that the effects of prolonged sitting can kind of linger, even with exercise.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, one study found that men who spent more than 23 hours a week watching television
Yeah.
had a much higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease
Wow.
than those who watched 11 hours or less, regardless of how much they exercised.
So you're telling me that my weekend Netflix binges are not good for me?
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
well,
everything in moderation.
Moderation, exactly, but it is something to think about.
Yeah. Okay. So like, why is sitting so bad for us?
Well, one possible explanation is that when we sit, our muscles aren't really contracting and relaxing the way that they would if we were standing or walking.
Right.
And this kind of reduced muscle activity leads to a decrease in the production of enzymes that help break down fat and sugar.
So we need those enzymes
We need those enzymes.
to function properly.
Yes. So when we're not producing them as much because we're sitting all day, it can contribute to some of those health problems that we talked about.
Okay. So is it fair to say that sitting for hours on end, it's almost like we're putting our metabolism on hold, even if we're like hitting the gym later? Are we counteracting that?
That's a really good way to put it, yeah. It's like you're hitting the gym, but then you're also hitting pause on your metabolism
Right.
throughout the day.
Right. And we're just talking about the physical aspects of this.
Exactly.
But I'm sure there's more to it. There's got to be some kind of impact on our mental health and our cognitive function and all of that.
Absolutely. You're right. Sitting for long periods, it's been linked to an increased risk of depression and anxiety as well.
Really? I mean, I've definitely felt that like sluggish, unmotivated feeling after sitting all day.
Yeah.
But to think that it could actually be increasing my risk of depression,
Yeah.
that's kind of wild.
It can be a little bit surprising, but when you think about it, it kind of makes sense.
Okay.
When we're sitting for long periods, we're less likely to engage in physical activity, which is a natural mood booster.
Right.
And then also being glued to a chair can lead to social isolation.
Yeah, that's true.
And that can also contribut to mental health issues.
Yeah, no, you're totally
Yeah.
right. You're totally right. It's all connected.
It really is.
Wow. Okay, so we're not just talking about our physical health, we're also talking about our mental health when it comes to sitting.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm ready to stand up.
I know, me too. Yeah, it's all about finding that balance.
Right.
We don't have to stop sitting altogether,
Right.
but just being more aware
Yeah.
and making those conscious choices throughout the day.
So what are some things that we can do? Because, awareness is one thing,
Right.
but then actually being able to take action
Right.
is a whole other thing.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I would say try to just build more movement into your routine.
Okay.
And, I don't mean you have to become a marathon runner.
Right.
Just little things throughout the day.
Yeah.
So, like, even when you're on the phone, you could stand up.
Oh, yeah?
Take short walks during your breaks.
Right.
Or even just stretching at your desk. Every little bit really does count.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Like, even if you just stand up for a few minutes.
Exactly.
Every hour.
Exactly.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
What about for people who maybe they do have those jobs where they are sitting for a long time?
Right.
Are there any, like, specific recommendations as far as how much exercise they should be getting to try to counteract that?
Yeah, in general, they recommend aiming for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity per week.
Okay.
Or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic activity.
Okay, and that's per week.
That's per week.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you can, build in those breaks throughout the day, that's really the most important thing.
Okay, you mentioned earlier you used some phrases that kind of scared me a little bit, like gluteal amnesia and dead butt syndrome.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what's actually happening to our muscles when we're sitting for so long?
Yeah, so basically when we talk about gluteal amnesia or dead butt syndrome, we're talking about what happens when your gluteal muscles, which are the muscles in your buttocks,
Okay.
they become weak and inactive from prolonged sitting.
So it's like our glutes are forgetting how to work.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, when you're sitting for a long time, your gluteal muscles are in a shortened, inactive state.
Okay.
And over time, this can lead to muscle atrophy, which basically means your muscles are shrinking and weakening.
Okay, so what are the consequences of that besides, not being able to, like, rock a swimsuit?
Right.
Like, what does that mean for us?
Well, it goes way beyond just aesthetics because your gluteal muscles, they play a really important role in supporting your spine.
Yep.
They stabilize your pelvis, and they help you with all of your movements.
I see.
So when they're weak, it can throw off your whole body mechanics
Okay.
and lead to things like lower back pain, hip pain, even knee pain,
Wow.
and an increased risk of injuries.
Okay, I'm convinced.
Yeah.
What are some things that we can do to strengthen those muscles?
Well, there are lots of exercises that you can do even without going to the gym.
Okay.
Things like glute bridges, hip thrusts, and even just standing glute squeezes can be really effective.
Standing glute squeezes. Okay.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah, just stand up and squeeze those glutes.
Okay.
And another thing that's really important is just paying attention to your posture.
Oh, yeah.
So making sure your chair is adjusted properly,
Yeah.
Keeping your feet flat on the floor, relaxing your shoulders.
Right.
Because when you have poor posture, it can put a lot of stress on your spine.
Totally. I know I'm so bad about slouching,
Yeah, me too.
especially like when you're at the computer.
Especially when you're at the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about like those donut cushions that you see? Does those actually help at all?
Some people find that those ergonomic supports,
Okay.
like those donut cushions or even just ergonomic chairs,
Right.
can be helpful
Right.
for improving posture and reducing discomfort.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that those are really just tools.
Right.
They're not like a magic solution.
Right.
Movement and exercise are still key.
It's like a bonus, not a replacement.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Your body, it thrives on movement.
Right.
We weren't meant to be stationary
It's true.
for hours on end, so we really need to make sure
Good food.
we're moving.
Yeah.
Yes, and not just in a planned workout session,
Right.
but throughout the day, those little bursts of activity.
Okay.
Even if it's just standing up and stretching or walking around the office,
Gotcha.
it can make a world of difference.
Yeah, it's like sneaking in those mini workouts throughout the day.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is amazing how, like, all of this is connected. Well, this has been super insightful. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
Of course. Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
I think if anything, our listeners are probably feeling very motivated to get up and move around,
I hope so.
including myself.
Yeah, me too.
Any like final words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap up?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that our bodies were really designed to move.
Right.
So don't be afraid to get up and move around throughout the day.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a few minutes at a time,
Yeah.
your body will thank you for it.
It's so true. Well, that's it for today's episode of QuickSpeak, the English podcast that breaks down all those fascinating topics into bite-sized pieces for you.
Yeah.
A huge thank you to our expert for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And to our amazing listeners out there, thank you as always for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful conversations just like this one. And let us know in the comments what you'd like us to explore next.
Yeah. What do you want to know?
Exactly. Until then, stay curious.